Welcome into the Hall of Fame Dynasty podcast. It is MLB preview time once again, and we are on our sixth episode of it. And I'm actually very lucky to have Sean join me for his team preview of his Arizona Diamondbacks. Obviously, he was the Atlanta Braves when he was last with us, but he has taken over gone west from there and taken over the Diamondback system. And we have him on tonight as a surprise. And so how you doing tonight, Sean?
Good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I felt tired as hell getting off from work, but I feel more awake now, especially since I get to talk some baseball with you.
All right, let's do it.
So, your Arizona Diamondbacks, is there a reason you chose them? Obviously, the Atlanta Braves were taken because of Chris, but why the Diamondbacks?
Uniforms, man. They're one of the teams that I've always kind of liked their uniforms, even the old ones, now the new ones, especially with that teal that's thrown in there. Just kind of throws it off, and that's the main reason why. Outside of that, really no particular reason.
I used to love the purple jerseys. I actually really liked those back in the day. Those were nice.
Yeah, man, they're fire. My son's little league team. They were the Diamondbacks for a season and wore like teal jerseys and teal socks and all.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. So why don't we get into your team? It finished in fifth place last year. First round exit, unfortunately. But you did finish one game above 500 with a record of 123 wins, 122 losses, and 7 ties. Not a bad year, especially since you were gone. Right. Your team performed pretty well, and I think the biggest struggle there was mostly pitching. But that was kind of addressed this offseason even before you came back. But you gained some decent players, some that are more impactful than others. So the biggest 5 that you gained were Nick Ahmed, Tommy La Stella, Alex Verdugo, Max Scherzer, and Brent Honeywell. Obviously, Max Scherzer is an ace, and we all know what he can be. But between Verdugo, La Stella, Ahmed, and Honeywell, which one of those are you excited for the most?
To be honest, man, it's probably going to be Verdugo. I think he kind of got a fresh start in Boston. He was kind of crowded in the outfield and everywhere else over in LA. So getting him out and getting him where he's going to probably play, a full season as long as he stays healthy, I think he'll do pretty good.
And that's going to be the biggest question with him, too, is whether he's able to stay healthy. He's currently dealing with a back fracture, which that just doesn't sound like fun at all. But I like the move to Boston. Obviously, he should bat leadoff or pretty close to the top of that lineup. So in front of guys like Devers and JD Martinez for the time being, he could put up a lot of runs. He may not have a lot of power or a high amount of stolen bases, but I think he can be a good 15, and maybe as he grows a little bit more, 20-20 guy. So I think he's a good get for you.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, he can spread the ball around, so that's a big part, too.
It is. It really is. And maybe he takes advantage of that short right field wall at times, too. I really like Tommy La Stella. He's a sneaky pickup there for you, especially out in LA with Joe Madden. I think he should bat leadoff in front of guys like Trout and Rendon and Shohei Ohtani. So he should easily put up 100 runs, and he'll be one of the sneaky guys at the end of the season that you go, holy crap, he put up a great year.
He did. His numbers actually last year weren't horrible. I followed him when he was in the Atlanta system for, I think, a year, maybe 2 at most. And, he had potential to kind of – he actually came from South Carolina. He played college ball up at Coastal Carolina. So, I've kind of followed him all through college and all. And, Vic reached out and he wanted to get a hold of a DJ, and I was ready to get rid of his old ass, so I jumped on.
I like it, and it makes your team a little bit deeper, and that, especially with our offense, you kind of need that. Now, you lost some really big names over this offseason. Obviously, 2 names for that you weren't here for were Christian Yelich and Ronald Acuna Jr., and then you recently dealt DJ, like you mentioned, DJ LeMahieu and Casey Mize. The Christian Yelich deal was originally struck between the Rockies and, at the time, the Brewers, and Yelich ended up in the Twin system because he didn't want to see Keith gain that extra advantage, get another star player like Christian Yelich. And I went after Acuna shortly after the baseball season
Right.
ended. Tried to get that kind of gain in the offseason, but out of these four, who hurts the most for you?
Probably going to be. I mean, it has to be Acuna. I mean, one being a Braves fan, but his numbers are just going to be. I mean, the kid's talking about trying to do 50-50, and he can easily do 30-30. So that's a pretty big loss.
I'm trying to think of when the last time somebody went 50-50. My guess would probably be Bonds.
Ooh, I couldn't even tell you.
If he ever had a 50-50
I don't
season.
even think he had a 50-50. Maybe 40-40, but I don't think he had 50-50.
Yeah. If he was able to go 50-50, it'd be pretty damn impressive. I mean, that's something for the record books for
Right,
sure.
exactly. I don't think he will. I think he'll be more 40-40 type. But if he does, man, it'll be crazy.
I was surprised to see you deal Casey Mize as well, considering that you were so excited for him, especially when you were able to draft him that year that he was available. And was there a reason that you were willing to move him at this point?
So at that point, it was more just trying to grab a couple of bats. Verdugo, like I said, just a few minutes ago when we spoke about him, he just kind of stuck out to me, and him getting out of LA, I think, is going to help him as long as he stays healthy. So we kind of struck a deal and got it going.
Makes sense, and especially you wanted to improve that outfield of yours, and offense is a little bit harder to find on the waiver wires, so I like that move for you.
Yep.
So why don't we get into your roster here? And obviously you have the best catcher in all of fantasy baseball with JT Realmuto, and he had a great year last year. Surprisingly, I mean, probably didn't live up to what people thought he could do, especially in a great Phillies lineup, but still put up good numbers. And what do you expect him to do this year?
Honestly, I think JT is going to have probably even a better season than what he did last year. The thing you got to think is he moved from Miami to Philadelphia. Granted, Philadelphia has a great lineup with him and Harper being in it, plus Reese Hoskins and everything else, but they didn't seem to blend very well, and I expect that to change some this season. And you'll see that Phillies team probably come together. As much as I hate to say it, being a Braves fan, you'll probably see that Phillies team come together, and they're going to be there's going to be some better numbers put out of him and that whole and probably the entire lineup.
I agree with you there, and I feel like they were just. It felt like they were under a lot of
Yeah.
pressure because everybody said they won the offseason. They added the big bat and Harper, and they obviously added guys like Gene Segura, JT Realmuto. And actually, looking at Realmuto's numbers, he was actually better than I thought he was. 25 home runs, 83 RBIs, 92 runs, and a 275 average. He scaled back a little bit in the average department, but we all know that fluctuates here
Yep.
and there. But I think he's going to be solid once again. The steals obviously have faded a little bit, but they don't really need him to steal. And
No.
if that offense keeps up, he's going to be I could see him as a 90-90 guy again, and 25 home runs with the best average probably of all catchers. He's going to be the top number one catcher once again. I'd be surprised if he's
Oh,
not.
I would be too. I mean, there's really not much out there for him to really compete with. Honestly, I mean, you got a bunch of guys on the farm that eventually may come up and be decent with their bat, but again, they have yet to prove that. So for now, I'll put my money on him.
And then we mentioned Alex Verdugo a couple of times. So what makes you so excited for him to dive into him a little bit deeper for 2020?
It's just like I said, for whatever reason, he just seems like he was kind of almost like an afterthought in Los Angeles. It was a very crowded team. Didn't really have his place to kind of shine. Going to Boston, granted, there's some stars in Boston, but it's nowhere near as crowded as what LA was when he was out there. Big field, Boston. You got a lot of little corners and nicks and everywhere else that you can just kind of place the ball and get a ton of extra base hits or RBIs off of it.
That's true, and I think the park factors for Boston are actually better than LA. Obviously,
Right.
LA is a much bigger field. I'm pulling it up right now if I can find it. let's see, Boston. Yeah, Fenway was the ninth best park for home runs compared to Dodgers, which was 24th. So I think that should boost his power numbers a little bit, especially if we see the juice ball stay in 2020 like I expect it to. And the steals might not ever be there, but even if he goes, would you be happy with, say, a 18 home runs and 6 stolen base type season?
From him, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm expecting somewhere between 15 to 20 home runs. So if he produces in that area, we'll be good to go. Now, the one thing that I also looked at when I was going through that particular trade was his numbers with when he played in Boston. Granted, it was very limited, as a Dodger going out to Boston, but I think I want to say he had like 4 games, 5 games where he played in Boston, and he had 2 or 3 home runs within that little time frame that he played out there.
Right.
So
Hey,
small sample size.
that's always a good
Yeah,
sign,
it
though.
is.
Surprisingly, they don't projected lineups don't have him in there right now. They have Kevin Pillar taking up about half the time and Jackie Bradley Jr. being a mainstay, obviously in center field. But I would expect Verdugo to take that job pretty quickly,
Yeah, I would
personally.
too. I don't think. I mean, Jackie Bradley's okay, but I don't see him being full time.
No, and especially Kevin Pillar as
Yeah.
well. His defense isn't great. His offense isn't great either. So
Yep.
Verdugo may be a bench bat to start the year, but by the end of the year, he should have some pretty good
Yeah, I would
numbers.
expect so.
Now, obviously, you've been posting a lot about Trevor Bauer, and so I figure you're excited to have him have his. I think you called him the comedian when we were
Oh yeah.
talking before, before we started the podcast recording. But is that a personal one nickname that you gave him, or is that something that because I haven't seen that
No,
nickname
it's just
before
personal.
personally?
I mean, he's a big clown. Either there's really no in between with Trevor. Either you really like him or you really dislike him. Me personally, I like him. I've liked him for long before all of this scandal and everything else kind of came out. He's just been one of those guys that he spoke his mind. He didn't really hold back. Said what he felt, and he went about his business. And a lot of people take harshness to it nowadays, but it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, he ended up being right. He called him out. He said, "This is what's
Yeah.
going on in Houston. Y'all need to fix it, or it's going to continue going on." And sure enough, boom, it's out.
Well, and even even without that, he was also talking about the fact that Houston tends to use
Their
mixtures
spin rates
on their
and-
hands for the pitchers for their spin
Yep.
rates. I mean, the fact that Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, all their spin rates went up. And if you haven't read the MVP Machine, the book that came out a while back, which included him in it, he actually, and in an interview post game, he actually said, "Go back and look at my spin rates for 3 innings of this certain game." And he admitted, "I used a substance to get the better spin rate, and then I washed it off." And you would see his velocity, his spin rates all went down. And the fact that he was willing to be like, "I did it, but this is what's going on down
Yep.
there," especially in Houston, that's a bold move by him. And he's, like you said, you either love him or hate him. I'm on the love side because the dude is straight up honest. He's willing to. He doesn't care if he fucks up. I mean, he screwed up his hand or cut his hand before the World Series in 2016, and everybody tried trolling him, and he just laughed about it. He's willing to laugh it off, and it's always good to have a fun personality to watch on your
He's
team.
the type that when he's done, he'll just pick up and walk away from baseball and be done with it. And he loves the game. He loves the aspect of the game, but also at the same time, he's not to the point to where he's going to be a lifer. And that's why you're gonna start seeing him do 1 year contracts. He's probably gonna get a lot of fines this year. I mean, you already saw it in spring training with tipping his pitches. I mean, I'm sure the MLB is not very happy with him at the moment, even though it was just a spring training game. I mean, he was tipping his pitches, but he was still throwing 97, 98 on the 2 pitches that I saw where he tipped them.
Well, and you know why he won't sign more than 1 year contracts, right?
I forgot exactly what it was, but something crazy I remember.
He's got a bet slash a deal with one of his buddies, basically, that if he ever inks a contract that's longer than 1 year, his buddy gets to shoot him in the nuts with a paintball gun. So,
wow.
good reason not to do it, because I've gone paintballing, and I don't want to take one to the groin. I'm good. That's not personally on my list of things to do in life.
And he'll be one of the first dudes that will tell you that he's not the most physically gifted. He's not, he's not very buff or, spends a lot of time in the gym and all, but he perfected pitching. I mean, he
Yeah.
worked hard, busted his ass, and he got to the league, and he's showing out. A lot of people are like, well, he's not an ace. I mean, look at his numbers. His numbers aren't too far off from what you would consider an ace.
Yeah, and the biggest thing last year was his command, and if he can gain that back, he could easily bounce back to 2018 where he has an ERA under 3 and he has 270 strikeouts. The strikeout numbers were there, the whip was a little bit high, but I mean, if he gets that all back, he's going to be a monster for fantasy.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a good year. He's just going to want to go out and just kind of show everybody what he can do and do it the legal way.
Exactly. So why don't we get into the strength, league average, and weakness of your team? You've got a strong team. Obviously, you had to get into the playoffs last year, and I think you're going to be able to do it again. But the biggest strength on your team, it's really weird because when you left, it was mostly your offense.
Yep.
But now your biggest strengths on offense are stolen bases and OPS. Obviously, a lot of those stolen bases are going to come from Malik Smith as long as he gets the playing time. And that could change a lot, but you have a guy in Dylan Carlson coming up who looks like he could be a 2020 guy if he breaks camp with the Cardinals, and you have Tommy Pham who always threatens for 2020.
Right. He does.
So, and you really don't have anyone that's a zero-speed guy until you get to Justin Smoke and Tommy Listell, and that's the back end of your roster. So I like that. I think you'll be competitive and possibly strong every week as long as you get Malik Smith in the lineup. And OPS, you really don't have anyone that sucks at it. You don't have anybody like in the 900s, but your team is consistent all around, and I think that'll play well for you.
Yes, I agree.
And then on the pitching side, which was surprising, and so you've got quality starts, saves and holds, ERA, and WHIP. I think you're going to be competitive there, and you've got the ability. You really don't have anyone that pitches to contact a whole lot. You've got some strikeout guys. And I like that for you. Do you feel the same way about your pitching staff, or what do you think?
Honestly, I looked at it when I first jumped back into the league, and I was shocked to see Acuna and Yelich gone. But then I saw Max, and I was like, okay. And the roster it was semi good. And I was like, okay, there's a few things that I want to work on. And not saying that I'm not necessarily done yet. I'm sure there may be a trade or two before the season starts or right as the season starts. Just kind of gauged off of how everything goes. But pitching, I really felt comfortable with. That's the main reason one of the reasons why Casey was gone, because I felt pretty comfortable. The only person that I think off of the rotation that I'll probably end up losing within the next couple of years is going to be Greinke. Greinke's bound to fall off eventually at some point in time. There's a couple of older guys, but he'll be the main one that I'll be kind of concerned about. But Honeywell looks like he has a little bit of potential down in the minors, so all goes well for him. He should be able to jump right into that spot. And pitching looks good, man. I was excited to see that.
And Honeywell's one of my favorites, and I hate that just the way his career has gone so far because he had other guys called up ahead of him when he should have been called up earlier. The Tampa Bay Rays wanted to play around with his service time, and then he gets hurt, and then he tries to come back, he gets hurt again. But, man, he's got that screwball, which is nasty. He's got a good fastball as well. I just want to see him stay healthy and see him perform up to the potential that we originally saw a couple of years ago.
It's going to happen sooner than later, or he's going to be gone, one of the two. So, I mean, there was a little bit of potential there last season. I think he had 5 starts with 2 quality starts, and I think his ERA hovered around 3 and some change for those 5 starts. So, I mean, it wasn't horrible by all means. It's just one of those things. It's a small sampling size. Hopefully he'll get some more time this season. If he doesn't start off in the minors, at least come up in September-ish call-ups and maybe get somewhere between 5 and 6 starts again, and hopefully next year be up.
That's the projected. He has yet to pitch in the majors. That was his projected
Oh,
for
that's his
this
projected.
year.
Oh,
Yep, they have him projected for 5 or 6 starts, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually up before that, just because obviously Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, and Tyler Glass now are excellent pitchers. But if Yanni Chirinos or Ryan Yarbrough struggle, I could see them bringing up Brent Honeywell just
absolutely.
because of the fact that he's already 24. You're going to have him until his age 30 season, 31 season, so you may as well bring him up, and I'd love to see him perform.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
he'd only add to your strength of your team with that, with your quality starts, your ERA, and your WHIP. Now you have some categories that are very league average, which not bad at all, and you know that you've got a good baseline for it. You know you're going to be able to be competitive in it, and those ones are mostly on your offensive side with runs, home runs, RBI, and
Yep.
average. Obviously, the counting stats, those are going to fluctuate every year. Somebody like Chris Bryant on another team was surprisingly below average in RBIs, but you've got guys like Anthony Rizzo, runs, they're going to hit for power, and I'm excited to see what your team can do because home runs I felt
Yeah, he
was
was.
it's on the border between strength and league average. If you get Hoskins back to where he should be and Carlos Correa actually stays healthy for once, or you add another bat, a big bat, that's going to jump into a strength for you fairly quickly, which then also bumps up RBIs. So I like that for you. Your average, you really don't have anyone that kills you. Hoskins, maybe if he still struggles, but are you excited to see your
Yeah,
average? Do you hope they increase to a strength, or what are you looking at here?
yeah, that's it. I mean, Hoskins is, of course, the one that's like was standing out to me. Um, Again, it goes back to like what we talked about with Philly. I think they just really struggled to kind of put everything together last year to have a decent team, a decent season, and he really felt the effects of it. You know, Bryce Harper is still going to do Bryce Harper things. That's a guarantee. JTR is still going to do JTR things, but Hoskins needs for a lot of things to kind of align for him to have a really good season, and it just wasn't there in Philly. So it's gonna depend on how Philly does. Me personally, I think Philly's gonna be a much better team than what they were last year. I think they'll end up probably being a wild card out of the East,
Well,
and
and
it'll
Reese
either
Hoskins
be
did change
Atlanta
his stance this offseason as well,
or
so
Washington winning
maybe he only
the
gets up
division
to a
again.
250 average, but I mean, you figure 250 average, and then you're maybe looking at a
Yep.
360, 370 OBP with the way he can slug. He's going to be a big part of the difference between your team being a league average offense and a strength for your team. So he's going to be the biggest one that hinges on it, and plus he'll raise your average as well. So I like that a lot. Now
Yep.
the
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, he's definitely the weakness there, and I mean, Calhoun doesn't look like he's, of course, very good average wise. But outside of that, I mean, those are the two that kind of stick out to me. Smokes kind of, he's a bench player, so I'm not too
I
concerned
like
about
Justin Smoke in Milwaukee
his
though. The
average.
fact
But
that I believe he's a left-handed hitter,
Hoskins
and
is
that
the main
always
one that
plays
stick
up
out to me.
to. I'm actually pulling it up now. Yeah, he's a lefty, and especially hitting
That's
in
true.
Miller Park, that's going to be great for him. And all of his peripherals said he should have had a higher average, higher OPS, so he could easily fit in for your team and
Yep.
bring your offense to where it should be. Now,
Funny fact, I
really,
actually played little league and some
I
travel
didn't
ball
know
with
that. That's
Justin.
pretty cool.
He's from right around here. Yeah, yeah. Never was on this. Never was on the same team. I mean, he was an opponent, but I remember him like growing up, and I mean, of course, even in travel ball, he was getting praise from everywhere that you could imagine. At like 12, 13 years old. In fact, I think he ended up getting invited to like a travel ball team in Atlanta somewhere,
Huh.
and
That's
I want
pretty
to say
cool.
that's kind of what
Now, the
got him
biggest
started as
weakness that
far
I
as
saw on your team
on the
is
path to
walks allowed
MLB.
by your pitching staff. Obviously,
Yep.
your relievers aren't projected for a lot of walks. Neither is a guy like Miles Michaelis But a lot of these guys aren't projected for a lot of innings either. But your heavy hitters, when it comes to innings pitched, the Trevor Bauers, the Mike Minor, the Zach Gallen, they're all projected over 60 walks for the season. Is that something that makes you nervous? Are you okay with that because of the fact that your guys that are more willing to walk guys have the strikeout potential? Or what's your mentality on that category?
That's exactly it. I mean, in that category, it's I'm not too concerned about it. It's they're not pitching to contact; they're pitching to strikeout. So
Exactly. It's
you're
only
going to
one
take a few more
category out of the
walks than
12
you
that we
are
play, and if you lose it every
the
week,
other way
so
around.
what? I mean,
So,
it's not a big deal, but
yeah.
it's good that, especially since you do have your higher
Yep.
walk guys are your strikeout masters at that point. So now, I want to see what your
That is
prediction
it.
is for
I
your
mean,
season.
it'll fluctuate a little bit,
What
go
is
up and
your
down. So
prediction
we'll
for
see
your
what it
season? Where
does.
do you think your team ends up? Do you think you're going to make the playoffs? What do you think?
Yeah. So for myself, I'm hoping to finish somewhere within the top three of the division. As far as like regular season stats go, if I finish in the top four, I'm okay with that, and hopefully advance around in the playoff. Um, get a couple of people in the draft. Like my minors for pitching is very slim now, so I got to do a few things in the minors for pitching, and just kind of work a couple of trade options. Like I said, trades are not necessarily done. I have a couple of plots kind of going in the background, so just kind of I really kind of want to see how spring training does before I necessarily pull the trigger on some things. I know some guys are like, it's just spring training, you can't really pay attention to it, but you don't know about injuries, you don't know about certain things going on in spring training, so you still watch. I mean, you want to see how they're hitting and everything else, and before you necessarily pull the trigger on a big trade. So top three, as long as I beat Minnesota and put him down
Well,
in last place where he normally belongs. So the hockey guy, that hockey guy. I'll never forget. Matt came into the league and in the NHL draft, he was so excited for the NHL draft because he figured he was going to know all these gems and all that nobody else would figure out. And me and you were like, okay, well, let's try to figure this shit out real quick so we can just go in and start stealing guys higher than what he expected us to go in and steal them. And that's exactly what I did. I think I took two
oh,
of
and
the
I know
guys that he was
especially I think he
eyeballing.
barely made the
grabbed one or
playoffs
two
last
that he
year.
was
His team
eyeballing,
this
so
year again
that's pretty hilarious.
is barely has the 6th seed and is barely holding on to it. So for somebody that was so excited about it, he hasn't performed up to what he supposedly knew. So
Yep. Yeah. That's but that's how it is sometimes. I mean, if it's a sport that you necessarily love, sometimes you suck at it when it comes to fantasy.
that's true.
Because you have heart set on players that you expect to do well, and they just never really turn into shit. and that's how baseball was for me for the longest. I was so set on like certain players turning out to do well, and they never did. And next thing you know, you're stuck with a shitty team. Vic's a prime
Yeah,
example.
there's
of that.
not
Look how
many
Yankees he's
Yankees
got
players
sitting on
that he
his team.
doesn't have at
Like,
this
he
point.
literally
Once
has the whole
I'm sure
roster
he'll be
just
happy
sitting
as
there.
soon as he gets every single Yankee out there. He'll have to pry Judge away from Mac at some
Right,
point.
exactly.
So we'll see if that happens. I'm sure he'll find a way to do it. But
I don't know what's in the water in New York,
well,
man,
especially
but the
last
injury
year.
bug up there just scares me away from like any Yankee player that I could touch. Pitchers, I don't. Pitchers, I mean, I think I know kind of what's going on with the pitchers. Is if you look at the Yankee from top to bottom, even into their farm system, we have their low A team here in Charleston, and all of their pitchers are 90s, mid 90 pitchers, high 90 pitchers, and I mean they're just throwing with a hell of velocity, and I mean that you got to think over time it takes a toll on your arm,
Oh
and if
yeah.
you got 17-year-old kids out there whose arms aren't developed from
Well,
the
and especially a
Dominican,
lot of their
they're
guys,
going to end up
off the top
tearing
of my
some
head,
shit.
aren't
And
typical
that's kind of what you're seeing going on right now.
6'3", 6'4", well-built guys. Luis Severino and some of their minor league pitchers are more lanky, 5'10",
Yep.
5'11", and they're still throwing hard. I'll give them credit, but you can't always sustain it. So, but
Yep.
I back to your team. I do have you as playoff bound, and we all know that
Yeah.
the playoffs are a random
That's it.
crapshoot. Things happen. Sometimes your team is hot one week, sometimes you're cold, and it all comes down to health as well. But I think you've got a playoff bound team. I think you should be well within the top
Yeah.
four even after the big losses that you suffered. You've got a good team. Health is going to be the biggest difference here, and especially your pitching staff. It could carry you to the playoffs, and if you get some good offensive performances, maybe you're in the championship. So I think you've got a good team there. You obviously are looking into the trade market. You've mentioned that a few times, and I'm excited to see what you do with this team and get it back to its previous glory in your mind.
Yep. Right. Yeah, I spent a lot of time, last
Yep.
season trying to get it to where I expected it to be. Then, life kind of got in the way. Shit happened. Had to get the mental back right, and so I'm back this year, and we'll get them back going and get them back on track. I don't expect it to be a very big fall
Right.
off.
It's just like
We'll
Marshawn Lynch
definitely
says:
be
protect your chicken, protect
competitive.
your
We're not going to
mentals.
tear it
You
down
got
and
to do
build it
it.
over again or anything like that.
So, and then Pacoda actually has you. I was surprised to see it. Obviously, the big losses of
Yes,
Acuna and Yelich
that's it.
hurt, but surprisingly your pitching was 25.1 WAR, which is ranks third in our league, and then your hitting was 35.9 WAR, and I think a lot of that was more due to guys like Eduardo Escobar and Cole Calhoun, where they're good for fantasy, but they obviously don't present a lot of defense. So I wouldn't look too much into that, but I thought it was pretty interesting to see with your team. So, I mean, while you don't have the flashiest offense, you'll be fun for fantasy. You're going to have some breakouts happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
They're number guys. They're your Listellas, who a lot of people don't have on a radar, but Listella's going to put up decent numbers and
exactly, and War is looking more
enough
into
to
defense and the
produce
all-around game, while we
and
are
along
focused
those lines. So
purely on
yeah,
offense. So
I'm
I
okay
like your
with it.
team still. I wouldn't worry too much about it. So before we sign out for the night, is there anything else you want to say? Obviously you had some things you wanted to get off your chest, so I'll kind of let you have these jump on the soapbox, if you will.
I mean, I already called out Minnesota. I told him he's going to finish dead last. Me and him have always had a love-hate relationship. So he's my buddy. I'm always going to look out for him. But yeah, your ass is finishing dead last, dude. Just to let you know.
Especially since we do have
And
the counter argument in
go
there.
in,
I
try to
know,
make a few trades. I
obviously,
may go in and
Mac
just
and
screw
Chris
him up
have
for the hell of it.
used that over the last few months. They just want to jump in and jumble it all up and cause some chaos.
Yeah, I came back. Who pissed in
I have
Chris's
no idea.
Cheerios,
He's
man?
been doing that for like the last
He's like
6 months.
disputes
Any
everything
trade that
now.
goes
I'm
on,
just
he's
like,
gonna
what the
jump in and
hell? Where
counter.
did this come from?
It feels like he's one of the people that just wants to see the world burn, and he's doing everything he can at this point to make it happen.
I think so.
Exactly. This is fine.
It's just like that little gif where the little thing sitting in the kitchen watching everything burn around him. Like the whole house is burning down. Yeah, this is fine. Don't worry about me. I'm good. Yeah, no, I was like, because I mean, I remember him being a little feisty and all when I was in the league initially, but he was pretty chill. He was laid back. Another thing I will say is I was glad to come back and see pretty much everybody stuck around. I was,
Hmm.
me and you were big, and of course, forming the league. We brought Mac from a league that me and you were playing in, and then we grabbed a hold of Vic and Kevin. I knew them from a league that I was in that like dismembered before it even got started. Which we've told that story 100 times, but it was just a complete mess. Like the commissioner got mad because
Wow.
everybody was drafting all the
Wow.
players from his team that he wanted, and he was just like, "All right, I'm done. Screw this shit. I'm out." So between me, you, Mac, and then we brought in Vic and Kevin, and then you got Keith and Jared.
I want to say
Those, I mean, they
Reddit,
came
I
in and
think, but
right from the
I don't
get
remember.
go, and I found them off of, I don't even remember, Reddit maybe. Uh, yeah, yeah, this is crazy, man. And both of them, like, they're usually, in
Right.
checking on me every day now, just like,
Well,
hey, what's up?
and then of course,
Keith is like,
obviously,
I'm
we've
sitting out
got
on the porch drinking coffee or something,
Chris
or smoking
Barnes in here.
or
He's got
smoking.
a relationship with those two as well, and it sounded like you had a relationship with him as well, and you knew him at some point. So I like how much.
Yep. No, I honestly didn't. So when I came back in and he said that little spill that he said, I don't even remember what the hell he said. Honestly, I've never met Chris before. I think Jared brought him into the league, so I've never met Chris Barnes before. Don't know who the hell the dude is outside of the league, but he's cool in my book. I mean, he hung around, he stuck through it, and he keeps the league going. And I think out of out of everything, really, you only have one
Let's
replacement
see
owner,
that. Yeah,
which
Steve
I
took
want to say was the
over.
original Miami
He was the
Marlins
Toronto Blue
way
Jays
back
last year, and I
when we
think it was
originally
the
started.
Marlins that he
Uh,
took over from someone else. Yeah, when we initially started.
when we initially started. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, out of that, I mean, and he seems pretty active. He pops in from time to time, and
Yeah, and he's a good
I know
buddy
he
of
got
mine.
his
He
roster
lives close
squared
to
away
me,
for
and
MLB.
so
So
if there's ever
looks
any
like we're gonna
issues, I
have a
know
good
he's
season
close
with
by.
everybody
But he's
here.
a good guy, and we've got such a good group, and I'm glad that we have it. I couldn't have asked for a better league, and I honestly appreciate everyone here because it's just so much fun. So if you don't have anything else, I think we're good. This is your team, and I can't wait to see what you do because you're always
Yeah.
active. You're always looking to move pieces from other sports to improve in baseball and especially make this team in your vision. I know you always have a vision for it, so I can't wait to see what it becomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we're 23 days. That's all
Yeah,
it
man.
is.
I'm
So
I'm ready.
I'm
Let's get it
excited. We've
started,
got
and
three more.
we're not too far away now. So
I
let's get
did
rolling.
record the St. Louis Cardinals preview with
Yeah,
Jared last
definitely.
night. I have you today, and we'll be putting these out in the order that I have them. Mine is coming up next. I think Mac is actually wanting to host that one, so it'll be weird being the interviewee. Yeah. It's gonna be weird having him be the interviewer, me
Oh
be
shit.
the
Here
interviewee,
goes the
and
shit
I
show.
mean Mac. Honestly, though, he's really good at keeping the conversation going. He doesn't just sit there and go, "Sure." So at least I know it should be something, but I know he's gonna talk shit, probably to Chris, which is just to stir it up. Oh God, yeah, especially once he hears this.
Definitely to me.
So
Yeah, definitely to me. Yeah, yeah. He will. It's welcome.
but I
It's
gotta thank you
like I
for
said, a
coming
love
on.
hate
I'm glad you're
relationship.
back
I
in,
love
and
the
I
dude,
cannot
but
wait to see what the season
fantasy wise,
holds
I
for
hate
all
him.
of us.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's get
Good
out of
luck to
here. Have a good
everybody.
night,
I
guys.
can't wait to get started, and I'll see y'all at the top. Yeah, man. Take it easy.